72 hours. That is the narrow corridor Stefon Diggs is sprinting through right now, and the walls on either side of him are made of one woman's name. The moment a single rumor crawled out of a backroom locker conversation, 3 different empires started to creak. The football empire he spent a decade nailing together brick by brick. The relationship empire that turned tabloid covers into wallpaper. And the private constellation of women he has been quietly orbiting for years, every single one of them now refreshing their timelines every 12 minutes like the next post might confirm their replacement. What just landed on Stefon Diggs' doorstep does not just rearrange his calendar. It rewrites the rules of how he survives the next chapter of his life. And the strangest part of the entire collision is this: the person he is reportedly trying to escape is the same person who, only months ago, was draped across his arm like a trophy he was proud to display in front of every camera in the room. The Whisper Network reached me in pieces, the way these stories always do. A fragment from one corner of the league, a second fragment from a podcast green room, a third fragment that arrived already attached to a screenshot. And once those fragments fused into a single picture, the picture stopped being gossip and started being a map. According to that map, Stefon Diggs is engineering an exit. Not from football, not from money, from geography. He reportedly wants to be signed by a franchise based in a state where Cardi B does not own keys, does not own square footage, and does not own a runway quiet hideaway she can dissipate into whenever the mood for confrontation strikes her. Picture the absurdity of that for a second. This is a grown man, a professional athlete, a person whose entire profession is built on outrunning humans the size of refrigerators, and the strategy his inner circle is feeding him is to outrun her by moving zip codes. Not to leave her, not to issue a statement, not to put a sentence between them on a press tour, to physically relocate the boundary of his life so that even a same-day flight has to clear a few hundred extra miles before she can stand outside his door. Now consider the slow, almost cinematic absurdity of the reversal we are watching. There was a season, and it was not even a long season ago, when the entire commentary around Stefon Diggs was that he was the wrong man for her. He was being called the upgraded edition of every name she had already burned through. He was being painted as the contagion of consequence she should be terrified of, not pursuing. The neighborhood prophets, the podcast circuit boys, the kitchen table analysts, all of them were saying the same sentence on different microphones. Cardi will regret this one. And here we are. The script has flipped sideways and landed on its back. Now those same voices are turning the camera on him and saying, "Brother, get out. Get out before she becomes the reason no general manager wants your jersey hanging in their building. Get out before the algorithm starts attaching her last public meltdown to your trade rumors. Get out, because in the cold, transactional language of professional sports, perception is currency, and right now you are bleeding pennies in front of an audience that watches every dollar." Trace the timeline with me. The friction did not begin with a confrontation. It began with a slow leak of perception. First, it was the suspicious birthday party energy, where the camera caught body language that did not match the captions. Then it was the social media restraint that lasted exactly long enough to feel performative. Then it was the public flare-up that even bystanders interpreted as one-sided. And inside that flare-up, the only person whose face stayed perfectly composed, perfectly still, perfectly framed for a future PR rehabilitation tour, was Stefon. Hands by his sides, eyes calculating, a small half-smile that read like a man who had already filed the moment away as evidence in his own defense. And the only person whose voice climbed, whose body language unraveled, whose entire public archive was suddenly being re-watched and re-edited by strangers with too much time, was her. The optics did not just suggest a disagreement. They suggested a chess move where one player did not realize they were already in check. Here is what the strategists circling him are reportedly drilling into his A. They are telling him the relationship is no longer an aesthetic. It is a financial variable, and not a flattering one. Front offices look at variables. Sponsors look at variables. Equipment partners look at variables. Even the broadcast booths whisper about variables before they put a microphone in front of a player who comes attached to a viral storm. When the variable in question keeps showing up on the trending tab for reasons that have nothing to do with athletic performance, the math turns ugly. The strategists are telling him that the public spat did more damage than any defensive coordinator could engineer. Not because anyone believes she physically endangered him, but because the visual of a grown athlete absorbing a public unraveling at the hands of his partner is, in the language of league image consultants, a brand contamination event. And brand contamination events get priced into negotiations, quietly, but pricelessly. So the plan reportedly being floated to Stefon is part exit strategy, Pot containment protocol. Step 1 is geography. Sign somewhere she does not have a key, does not have a guest pass, does not have a private back hallway with a name on a closet. Step 2 is schedule. Build a calendar so dense that even his own family has to book him 3 weeks out. Step 3 is narrative. Resurrect the version of himself that the public knew before the chaos, the version where he was framed as the focused, brooding, almost monk-like competitor who lived to run routes and disappeared the moment the cameras turned off. Step 4, and this is the cruelest one if you read it carefully, is to fill the silence. The silence where she used to live. He is reportedly being told to fill that silence with so much visible work that nobody, not even her, can claim he was being unfaithful to anything except the game itself. The architecture of the plan reads like a man trying to outrun a hurricane by repainting his house. And here is where the story starts to twist into something darker, something more telling about the woman at the center of it. Because the question that nobody on the podcast circuit is asking out loud, but everybody is mouthing in private, is this. Why does Cardi keep ending up in rooms with the same kind of man, wearing different faces? Why does the cast change but the script stay identical? Why is she the one who, after every public catastrophe, ends up looking like the person who lit the match, not the person who happened to be standing too close to the flame? There is a pattern here, and the pattern is not flattering. Look at the women who orbited him before her. Most of those women lived in relative invisibility. They were names without faces. They were faces without storylines. They were footnotes in a profession that does not love giving women last names. And then she arrived, and suddenly every single one of those footnotes became a headline. Kiki, Pre, Summer Giselle, Kay, Sky Marie. Names that the broader culture had either never heard or only half remembered through somebody else's storyline. And now they are recurring characters in a narrative they never auditioned for. She did not just enter his world. She inadvertently authored a Wikipedia page for every woman he had ever quietly cycled through. And that authoring is itself an indictment. Because what it tells us is that her presence does not absorb attention. It redirects it, multiplies it, and then redistributes it to the very people she presumably never wanted us to think about. Every time she shows up, the entire phone book of his previous companions gets a fresh search engine spike. Every time she posts, a half dozen sleeping accounts wake up and post in response. Every time she retreats, the women he was rumored to be entangled with somehow become bolder, louder, hungrier for the spotlight she keeps accidentally lending them. It is the cruelest form of generosity. She is the unwilling publicist for the very women her ego is most threatened by. And the worst part is that she does not seem to see the mirror. She keeps stepping into the frame as if the frame is hers, never realizing that her presence is what gives the frame to everyone else in it. There's a phrase I keep turning over in my head as I watch this unfold. The phrase is structural collapse, not collapse of the dramatic, building falling, glass everywhere variety. Structural collapse of the slow kind, the kind where the load-bearing beams of a life were already cracked. And one more bad decision tips the whole thing over without anyone seeing the moment of failure. That is what this looks like from the cheap seats. A woman whose career was built on a kind of unfiltered, raw, almost combustible authenticity is now being undone by the same volume that built her. The same megaphone that turned her from a stripper-turned-reality cast member into a multi-platinum, statuette-collecting cultural force is now the megaphone broadcasting her unraveling in real time. With a HD camera with surround sound with no off switch, she used to amplify her wins. Now she amplifies her wounds. And the algorithm does not care which one she is feeding it. It just rewards both with the same dopamine economy. Pay close attention to the language the podcast circuit is now using when they talk about Stefon's options. They are not saying he should pause. They are not saying he should reconsider. They are saying he should liberate himself. That word, liberate, is doing heavy lifting. Liberation is what you reach for when you describe escape from something that has crossed from optional into oppressive. Liberation is what you whisper to a friend whose phone has become a tracking device. Liberation is what you write on a poster when an entire generation of fans starts to think their idol is hostage to their own choices. They are reportedly telling Stefon that he is becoming a hostage to the optics of being publicly tethered to a woman who keeps producing the kind of footage that ends with strangers debating whether the police should have been called. They are reportedly telling him that the longer he stays inside the frame, the more the frame starts to shape his career, his endorsements, his street legitimacy, and even the way teammates joke about him in the locker room. They are reportedly telling him that the cost of remaining is no longer measured in heartache. It is measured in contracts. And here is the cruelest internal joke about this entire situation. Stefon is reportedly afraid, not afraid of losing her, afraid of what she will do when he leaves. Read that again. The man who is being framed by half the internet as the cold, untouchable, emotionally bulletproof athlete is reportedly tiptoeing around the exit because he is worried about the velocity of her response. The whisper is that he cannot simply post a statement and disappear into training camp. He cannot block a number and reroute his calls. He cannot move into a new house and trust that there is no spare key. Because the woman he is reportedly trying to outrun has the resources, the platform, and the public goodwill of a fan base that will mobilize on her behalf with the kind of efficiency normally reserved for political campaigns. So he is being told to do it slowly, quietly, architecturally, build the exit in pieces small enough that she cannot grab any single piece and turn it into a viral grievance. Build the exit in stages so that by the time she realizes the door is gone, he is already in another building, another zip code, another season. I find that detail almost poetic. A grown man, 6 feet of pure athletic muscle, plotting his escape from a 5-foot-something rapper as if she were a small but extraordinarily well-armed government. And what does that tell us about the alleged victim narrative she has tried to wrap around herself for the last few weeks? It tells us that her own partner, the man she insists is the source of her unraveling, is privately treating her like the storm, not the lightning rod. He is the one moving furniture. He is the one redrawing maps. He is the one stockpiling alibis. The portrait that emerges when you stack his reported behaviors next to her public ones is not the portrait of a wounded woman being abandoned by a careless man. It is the portrait of a tactician trying to dismantle a building without setting off the alarm system inside it. That is not the choreography of a man who hurt you. That is the choreography of a man who is afraid of what you might do next. Now strip this all down to the bone and look at what is actually underneath. A woman with extraordinary cultural capital keeps choosing partners who treat her like a temporary lease. A woman who insists she is misunderstood keeps walking into rooms with men whose entire history of relationships is a museum of misunderstood women. A woman whose music is full of declarations of dominance keeps ending up on the other side of someone else's dominance maneuvers. There is no spell that explains this. There is no curse. There is only a pattern, and patterns are decisions wearing costumes. The decision she keeps making is the same decision, dressed up in different jerseys. First, it was a man whose name became a punchline in her own song. Now it is a man whose name is being whispered next to phrases like exit strategy. The costume changes. The choreography does not. Examine what this says about the alleged spiritual entanglements people have been murmuring about for months. There has been chatter, low frequency but persistent, about rituals, about candles, about certain practices borrowed from older traditions that promise control over a man's attention. Whether anybody believes those claims is almost beside the point. The mythology around them is itself a tell. When the broader public starts associating a woman with rituals designed to bind a partner, it tells you that the partnership has been visibly imbalanced for so long that even superstition has been recruited to explain it. People do not invent stories about love potions when love is functioning. They invent them when the gap between what they see and what they expect is so vast that they reach for the supernatural to bridge it. The murmurs about her allegedly tampering with energetic boundaries are not a literal accusation in the eyes of most observers. They are a metaphor for the impossibility of the picture she keeps trying to paint. She is asking the public to believe she is dominant, chosen, and adored. The public is seeing a woman whose adoration has to be conjured because it cannot be earned by ordinary means. That gap is where the conspiracy theories live. Strip another layer back and ask the harder question. Why is she still here? Why is she not at home with her husband, the imperfect, exhausting, headline-generating man who at least gave her 3 children and a public history? Why is she chasing what observers are now calling the devil's candy, the kind of sweetness that turns into a chemical reaction the moment it touches your tongue? The simplest theory is the most uncomfortable one. She is not in love. She is in motion. She is using the velocity of the relationship to avoid the stillness that would force her to look at her own reflection. Therapy is the stillness. Solitude is the stillness. Sitting in a room with a notebook and a difficult question is the stillness. And stillness, for a person who has built their entire public identity on momentum, feels like death. So she moves, she posts, she fights. She arrives at parties where the air is already poisoned because moving through poison feels safer than sitting still in clean air. And the men she chooses are not loves. They are sedatives. They are noise machines. They are anything other than the silence that would force her to listen to herself. Track the players in his rotation and what their existence tells us. There is a chef whose name keeps surfacing in connection with hospital room timelines and labor room indignities. That chef has been alternately framed as a witness, a participant, and a whistleblower depending on which side of the storyline you sample. There is the hair braider, an everyday professional whose career is now being unmade and remade in court documents and tabloid recaps. There is a parade of social media-adjacent women whose visibility, as discussed earlier, increased the moment Cardi entered the orbit. And there is the muted, almost ghost-like presence of the women who came before all of these, the ones whose only public role was to bear his children, accept the silence, collect the support, and stay out of the frame. The contrast between the silent original cast and the loud new arrivals is itself the indictment. He chose silence before. He is now reportedly drowning in noise. And the loudest source of that noise is the woman he keeps publicly endorsing, while privately, according to insiders, planning the architecture of her absence. This is the cruelest sentence I can offer you about the entire situation. He is not running because he hates her. He is running because she has become unprofitable. That is the brutal arithmetic of his world. Love is not a balance sheet, but reputation is. And reputation in his profession is a slow build asset that takes a decade to mature and a single viral clip to liquidate. Every time her name trends, his agency has to do damage control. Every time her face fills a tabloid, his sponsorship calls run longer than usual. Every time she goes live and slips into the unfiltered register that built her career, his coaches have to pretend they did not see it on the team plane. He has reached the point where the woman he chose has become a tax on his career, and he is reportedly trying to renegotiate his exposure to that tax by physically moving out of the jurisdiction. It is a cold, almost surgical strategy. And it is the strategy of a man who has already done the math and concluded that the only way to keep what he built is to leave behind what he was building with her. What I want you to feel as we sit inside this story is how unique its cruelty is. Most breakups are private. Most exits are negotiated in living rooms and through lawyers and across difficult dinners. This exit is being negotiated in podcast green rooms, in front office whispers, in trade rumor blogs, and in the comment sections of accounts that have nothing to do with either of them. The intimacy of their unraveling has been outsourced to a million strangers who have collectively become the unpaid mediators of an empire that is trying to split itself in half without admitting that the split is happening. They have not announced anything. There is no statement. There is no joint declaration. There is only the silent migration of a man toward a different state, a different schedule, a different version of himself, while the woman he is migrating away from continues to post as if the migration is not happening. That asymmetry is the most damning piece of evidence in the entire archive. He is editing his life. She is editing her grid. Those are not the actions of two people who are still in the same book, let alone on the same page. And so the question turns toward us, the observers, the witnesses, the people who watch these collisions from a safe distance and decide what to take from them. What is the lesson buried inside this particular wreckage? The lesson, when you scrape away the celebrity glitter, is brutally ordinary. The lesson is that no amount of fame, money, music, or cultural relevance can buy you a partner who actually chooses you. The lesson is that a chosen partner does not have to be chased, does not have to be conjured, does not have to be bound through any ritual, literal or figurative. The lesson is that when a man is privately drafting his escape, the loudness of your love song will not convince him to stay. The lesson is that platforms are not partnerships. The lesson is that proximity is not affection. The lesson is that even the woman who built an empire on calling herself Barty could not negotiate a permanent place in the bedroom of a man who reportedly thinks of her as a temporary tenant. That is the lesson. It is unglamorous. It is unflattering. It is true. Imagine for a moment the conversation he must be having with himself in the quiet of his own training schedule. Imagine the cold morning when he laces his cleats and thinks about which jersey he wants to wear next year. Imagine the way the geography of his contract has started to look like a chessboard. Imagine the moment he glances at the schedule and quietly notes which away games will keep him in a hotel room rather than in a house she has access to. Imagine the small, daily decisions a man makes when he has decided that escape is no longer a possibility he is entertaining, but a project he is executing. That is the version of Stefon Diggs the public is not allowed to see. The version that is currently building, in slow motion, the most consequential off-field maneuver of his entire career. And the most chilling part is that he is reportedly building it while still smiling for photos, while still standing next to her at events, while still allowing the optics of partnership to hold the public attention long enough for him to finish the construction in the shadows. Now picture her, on the other side of this slow-motion exit, completely unaware of the velocity at which the ground beneath her is shifting. Picture her continuing to post the kind of content that worked when she was the protagonist of her own story. Picture her continuing to issue the kind of statements that used to land like grenades but now land like confetti. Picture the alarming possibility that her instincts have been so dulled by the chaos of the last few years that she cannot feel the floor moving under her feet. That is the most terrifying scenario in this entire archive. Not that he leaves. He will leave. The timeline tells us that. The whispers tell us that. The geography of his contract tells us that. The terrifying scenario is that she does not see it coming until the locks have been changed in 3 cities and the staff have all signed new contracts that do not include her name on the access list. That is the scenario that should keep her up at night. And if even a fragment of the rumored architecture is true, that scenario is not a possibility. It is a deadline. There is one final layer to this story, and it is the one that should make every observer pause. He is reportedly engineering this exit not because he has fallen out of attraction, not because he has met someone new in a way that demands disclosure, not because his family has issued an ultimatum. He is reportedly engineering this exit because his career is whispering instructions in his ear that his heart cannot drown out. The career is older than the relationship. The career fed him before she fed his ego. The career is the only partner he has ever had that has rewarded him exactly in proportion to what he put in. The relationship cannot make that promise. The relationship has demonstrated, repeatedly and publicly, that the more he puts in, the more chaos he gets back. So he is choosing the partner who never embarrassed him, the partner whose only demand is excellence, the partner whose only language is the precision of a route run on a Sunday afternoon. He is choosing the field over the woman, and in his profession, that is not betrayal, that is maturity. We should acknowledge, before we close, that there is a version of this story where she wins, not the version where she keeps him. That ship has reportedly already left the harbor. The version where she wins is the version where she uses this moment as the inflection point that reorders her entire next decade. The version where she steps off the carousel of charismatic, unavailable men and into the very stillness she has been running from. The version where the breakup, when it comes, becomes the spark for a body of work, an album, a film, a chapter of her career that finally lets the public see the depth that the noise has been hiding. The version where she becomes the artist her younger fans always insisted she could be if she would only give herself permission to stop performing pain and start interrogating it. That version of her is still available. It is not gone. It is waiting for her on the other side of the door he is reportedly preparing to close behind him. And if she is brave enough to walk toward that door rather than try to bar it shut, the wreckage of this season could end up being the foundation of the most interesting chapter of her entire life. But for that to happen, the woman currently posting receiving yard statistics like a teenager defending crush on the bus has to grow up faster than her brand will allow. She has to choose the difficult silence over the easy spectacle. She has to listen to the cold, professional voice of her team and ignore the loud, romantic voice of her own self-mythology. She has to surrender the fantasy that this man can be salvaged through public performance, through algorithmic loyalty, through the sheer volume of her insistence that she is the one. She has to accept that he, very quietly, has already decided she is not. And then she has to do the unthinkable thing for a woman of her temperament. She has to let him go without setting fire to anything on the way out. Without a tweet, without a live, without a hairdresser monologue or hospital room reveal or public park ambush. She has to let him slip out of the geography of her life with the same surgical quiet that he is reportedly using to slip out of haze. That is the only exit that preserves what is left of her dignity. And dignity, at this point, may be the only asset she has not yet leveraged. If I am being honest with you about what I see when I zoom out, this entire collision is no longer a love story. It is no longer even a celebrity scandal. It has become a case study in what happens when two people with massive public footprints attempt to negotiate a private heartbreak in front of an audience that has been trained by a decade of reality television to interpret every gesture as evidence. The audience is the loudest character in this drama. The audience is the unblinking eye that turns every cough into a confession. The audience is the reason he is reportedly engineering his exit through geography rather than honesty. Because honesty, in front of this audience, is not a clean transaction. It is a televised execution. So he is choosing geography. And she, if she had any strategic clarity left, would choose silence. But silence is the one currency she has never been able to afford. What follows next, in the coming weeks, will read like a screenplay we have all seen before. But we will read it anyway because it is happening to real people. The reports will get sharper. The geography will solidify. The team interest will become public. The contract whispers will become contract leaks. And somewhere inside that escalation, she will either feel the floor move and reposition herself with grace, or she will continue to dance on a surface that is already tilting toward the sea. I am not in the business of predicting outcomes for women who have spent careers being unpredictable, but I am in the business of reading patterns. And the pattern in front of us reads like a quiet, well-executed disappearance dressed up to look like a coincidence. By the time the public realizes what they are watching, the disappearance will already be complete. The new jersey will be folded in the new closet. The new state will already have a new routine. The new silence will already feel like a chosen piece. And the woman who once stood at the center of his frame will be left blinking at the empty space where his attention used to live, wondering when exactly the lights went out. Before we land this plane, sit with one more piece of the wreckage. Consider the women who came before her, the ones whose names never trended, the ones who learned a long time ago that this man's affection arrives like weather and leaves like weather, that you cannot bargain with a barometer, that you can only decide whether to carry an umbrella. Those women, the silent original cast, watched her arrive like a fireworks display and probably knew, in the quiet way that experience knows things, that the spectacle would not last. They had already done the math she is now being forced to do in public. They had already grieved the version of him that promises forever in the soft hours of the morning and then disappears into a hotel before lunch. They had already learned the difficult vocabulary of co-parenting with a man whose attention is rented, never owned. Their silence, the silence you once mistook for defeat, was actually wisdom. They were not losing. They were protecting their nervous systems. And now, from the comfort of their unbothered timelines, they are reportedly watching her dance through the same fire they already crawled out of, with the same lessons unlearned, with the same swagger unowned. There is no triumph in that watching. There is only the long, patient, almost maternal sigh of women who knew the ending before the credits started. And one day, if she is lucky, if she chooses the difficult mirror over the easy spotlight, she will join their quiet ranks. She will trade the megaphone for a journal. She will trade the spectacle for a sentence. She will trade the man for the lesson. And on that day, the women he once cycled through will not need to celebrate. They will simply nod, the way veterans nod at recruits who finally understand the cost of the uniform. Until then, she keeps performing. He keeps planning. The clock keeps subtracting from his exit window. And the public, hungry as always, keeps refreshing the page. There is one more layer that deserves the spotlight before we close. The role the so-called podcast circuit plays in moments like this is more than commentary. It is a kind of cultural triage. A handful of male voices, sitting in money-ized basements with microphones in front of their faces, have begun to function as the public ethics committee of celebrity relationships. When they pivot away from a woman, the broader marketplace pivots within 48 hours. When they sharpen their tone toward a name, the algorithm picks up the scent and turns the temperature up across every adjacent feed. They are not journalists. They are not therapists. They are not allies. But they are gatekeepers in a particular cultural moment. And right now the gate they tend is creaking open in his favor and slamming shut in hers. That is not a coincidence. That is a coordination of attention. And whether the coordination is conscious or simply emergent, the result is the same. He gets the script of the reformed competitor. She gets the script of the cautionary tale. He gets the comeback arc. She gets the meme. The next time you see a clip of one of those men dispensing relationship verdicts in front of a tripod, remember that those verdicts move millions of dollars in earnings, in brand deals, in geographic decisions. The microphones are not neutral. The microphones are weapons. And right now, they are pointed in a very specific direction. That is where the story sits tonight. a man drafting an exit through geography, a woman posting her way into invisibility without realizing the camera has already moved on, a community of observers watching the slow geometry of a separation that nobody has officially confirmed but everybody can already feel, a career being protected, a spectacle being unprotected, a relationship being unmade in the precise rhythm of a quiet, deliberate hand. The only honest question left is this: when the door finally closes, will she be on the inside, blindsided by the click of the lock, or will she be on the outside, finally awake, finally still, finally face to face with the version of herself she has been outrunning for years? That question does not have an answer yet, but the next 72 hours, the next 2 weeks, the next contract cycle will tell us everything we need to know. Drop your reading of this in the comments below. Tell me which version of her you want to see step through that door. Tell me whether you think the geography of his contract is the smoke and she is the fire, or whether she is the smoke and his career is the fire. Tell me whether you think any of the women orbiting his name are taking notes, sharpening their next moves, or simply waiting for the next vacancy. Tell me whether this is the story of a man finally putting himself first, or a man finally being honest about who he always was. There is no wrong reading. There is only the reading you arrive at after sitting with all the evidence. Share it. Argue with strangers under it. Come back tomorrow when there is more, because there will be more, and there will be more after that, until the architecture of this exit finishes building itself in plain sight. Bookmark this corner of the internet. Subscribe to the rhythm of these breakdowns. The next chapter is already being written somewhere between a podcast green room and a general manager spreadsheet, and we will be the first place that reads it back to you when the ink dries. Take care of yourselves out there. Be kinder to the people who actually choose you. And do not, under any circumstances, try to outrun your own reflection by chasing somebody else's noise. The mirror always wins. The noise always fades. And the loudest love song in the world cannot drown out a man who is quietly packing his bags in the next room. Remember the names that will resurface as this story keeps unfolding. Remember the timestamps that will be stitched together to form a forensic chronology. Remember the small, almost forgettable detail of the geography clause, the state-level boundary line that is reportedly the keystone of his entire exit blueprint. Remember the women whose archives are already being mined for foreshadowing. Remember the chef whose name keeps surfacing like a buoy in a storm. Remember the hair braider whose ordinary life has been rewritten by extraordinary circumstances. Remember the silent, original mothers whose patience may yet be vindicated by a single front office decision. Remember, most of all, that this is not a clean story with a clean ending. This is a slow, expensive, publicly negotiated unraveling, and you are watching it happen in something close to real time. Stay close. The next chapter is already breathing on the other side of the silence.